Hi guys, welcome to another video tutorial with me, Clarice. In today's video we are going to learn how to do these pretty loose pumpkins and creating easy florals inside the pumpkin and then like a little bit of a pumpkin cover top. I know it sort of looks like a third pumpkin in the background, but not really. This is supposed to be like a cover on the top. Again, a very loose, simplistic style where the colors are bright and speak for themselves and just something simple for you guys to follow along with, okay? So here's the supplies that I'm using. I am going to be using my Princeton No. 6 brush. And yes, it is possible to create that whole scenario of a painting using just one brush. I have my palette ready over here on the side. I am using my ZenART Supplies watercolor paper block, and then for colors I'm using my White Nights set of 36. So really quickly, what colors from this set are we using? So for my pumpkins I'm going to be using a combination of the Titan Red and English Red, maybe even throw in a little bit of Golden Deep. Then for the flowers, I'm going to be using some of my Ruby, Carmine, a little bit of Violet, and then some of my yellowish, Chromium Oxide and then green. You could also take some yellowish green and mix it with Mars Brown if you so wish, but I'm just going to keep this simple, easy, and fun. Alright, so here we go. I'm going to start off by mixing some of my Titan Red onto my palette and get a nice consistency, maybe like a 60-40 or even a 30-70. And then we're going to get, once we've created the ridges for the pumpkin, we're going to go ahead and get some of the darker color and just go right in to get a nice pretty blend. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to start off by doing my main pumpkin over here. So C strokes like this, and we're pressing down against the full length of our brush to get a nice enough coverage. We're pushing all the color down to the bottom. We can leave the top sort of open-ended. Here's my second ridge. Here's my third. We're keeping it loose, leaving a little bit of white space in between if we can. And then let's just do one more off this way, pushing all the color downward. So you can see how I've sort of left this here open-ended because the flowers are going to go there. Now, dipping the tip of my brush in water, I'm going to go right in and get some of that English Red. And I want to go ahead and add one stroke there. Again, pulling all the color downward. Another stroke there. Maybe a little bit of a stroke on the extreme left ridge. I'm going to get a little bit more on this side, and then finally one just on the outskirts here. You want to push all that color down to the very, very bottom, and once we have that, we've got our loose pumpkin shape so far. So now we're just going to go ahead and do the next pumpkin, and I'll use the same color. In this one I'm going to do slightly smaller. So again, same deal. And I'm going to get, now, because I'm using that one brush, I've now mixed up a lot of the colors. Well, between the two colors, they're sort of mixed. And that's okay. I'm going to do a little bit of a ridge in the background here. These three little frills almost. And then from the center is where the stump is going to come off. Going in with the dark color and just adding more shadowy areas here for this pumpkin. All right, there we go. So we are done this guy, and now we're going to do the shadow. So I'm just washing off most of the color, and I'm just going to go ahead and lightly graze the edge of this this pumpkin of mine is still damp, so what I am doing is literally drawing the color from this pumpkin and lightly adding these extensions or these strokes that are kind of pulling outward. And this one here at the bottom just needs a little bit of help on this way here. And I'm going to get a little bit of burnt umber. I'm just going to dab a little bit of that burnt umber here at the bottom. I want more of a brownish sort of shadow as opposed to a orangey shadow. I don't want it to blend in too much with our pumpkin. So I'm just going to get a bunch of really good dark sort of potent umber on my brush, and I'm lightly adding this to these areas here. And then immediately you can see it blending in with everything and giving us a nice blend. Washing off most of the color, I'm going to go ahead and extend this so we get a nice shadow effect. It's kind of, there we go. So we're almost done. Feel free to add a little bit more of dabbing with the brown if you want a darker result for your shadow. That can always be, it's never a bad thing. Kind of like what I am doing right now. Very loose, and we're not being super fussy or picky about this. So for those who are doing this for like the first time and never quite done watercolor before, this is a great exercise to just sort of let loose and watch the color blend in and kind of get used to watercolor and see what happens when you really go in and add additional dabs of color over, or what I would call layering, really. It gives you a nice startling effect, easy to achieve if you just remain patient and you're willing to try new things and explore, really. All right, so that's it. I'm going to leave this as is, and we're moving on to the next thing, which is going to be the flowers. We'll leave the stumps for the absolute end. So for the flowers, like I mentioned, I'm going to start off with doing the carmine first. And so I'm going to get a little bit of that, mix it onto my palette. And I want to get a nice dark color, because what I want to do is start off with doing 3 of these florals first, and then I'm going to mix a little bit of the violet, get a slightly different hue, and go ahead and do some more. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and paint some of that over here at the top. So just like your regular 5-petal flowers, all I'm doing is pressing down, and I'm going to do 5 of these petals. So just like that. Okay, so we want to leave white space in between. So if you are finding it hard to do this and leave white space, what I would suggest doing is this. Do 5 little dots, and then from these dots extend and create your petals, and you've got a flower. Now you can also go into the center and dab a little bit more of the carmine, so then this way the center looks more intense. I'm going to go ahead and create one more flower here. And then what I want to do is notice again how loose I am with my strokes. I'm not trying to perfect these flowers. I'm just kind of going loose. I'm going to get a little bit of the ruby. I did say we're going to do ruby, so I'm mixing that in here. And I'm just going to go and create same flowers, the same sort of flowers off to the side here. A couple of petals coming out from this guy here. And then I'll do one more ruby flower just at the top. Try and see if I can get one on a very loose scale there. Yeah. And now I'm going to mix a little bit of the violet with my ruby and get another variation of this color, which is a little more purpley. And dipping the tip of my brush in water. At this point we want to create these same sort of strokes in between our flowers, so it creates a little bit of a spacing between these colors. So even though they kind of look complementary, even though they because they're not complementary colors, but they look like monochromatic shades of that pink, it's nice to have this purple to go in and break it up. And then again, you can add a little bit more of the ruby in this, and this way you get a slightly different variation of the purple. Or you could just water down your brush a little bit more, or color, and then just go in and add a couple more dabs in between here, and it gives you a monochromatic sort of effect. Now there's a lot of white space in here, and that's great because we're going to be adding some leaves. So what I'm doing lastly is just kind of adding a couple of dabs, just kind of like fluffing almost the edges. Okay, and now we go in and get some green. So I'm going to get some of the chromium. It's a pretty green. I'm going to add that in between here and there. I don't want the areas I added in to be too runny. So make sure you dab your brush on your little paper towel before you sort of go in and add these little details. And then once we've got a little bit of green happening, you can go in and get your second green, which is going to be the darker green, and then just add more little dabs of that green. So I'm just going to go in, get some of that green, and I'm just going to add it lightly to what we already have here. And what's going to happen, you'll notice, is there's a little bit of a bleed happening. And that's what we want. We want the beautiful blend. We want things to look like they're sort of blending into one another and not a lot of focus on the detailing and the shape and stuff. So with the dark green, this is also where you can add a little bit more coming down over the pumpkin, because the pumpkin is a darker color. So that helps there. And then again, if you want to do a little bit of dotting to kind of represent fluffing, now's the time. Or you could even do a splatter afterwards. So there we go. One more thing that I would do to your flowers before they completely dry up is if you want to go ahead and add a darker hue to the center. So I would mix a little bit of the violet in with either with the ruby or with the carmine, and just kind of add it to some of the centers. Or if your preference is to use a yellow, that also works. That would also be pretty. This is just to get that nice bloom and flare out for your flowers. Make them pop just a little bit. And that's perfect. So we're done that, and now we just do a little bit at the top for our cover over there and do the stumps, and then we are done. Alright, so for the top, we're doing exactly like what we did down below. We're just going to go ahead and paint, put it off to the side almost like this. Just make sure everything is dried up here. So doing a stroke there, doing another one here. Notice how I'm very lightly or roughly kind of bringing it down. And then just dipping the tip of my brush in water. I'm just going to do something like that, leaving that intentional white space in between. And then I'm going to do the little background ridges for our pumpkin. Right, just that way. And then getting some of the English red, we're just going to go ahead and add some strokes in here. So it gives us that shadow effect for our ridges. If you feel like you need to go over some of your pumpkin edges, that's totally fine. Now we allow this to dry before we go ahead and add the stump at the top. But in the meantime, what I would like to address is that these have dried up and they're looking very light. So that can happen occasionally. So what you need to do is just go in and get more color and add a little more of the ridges. So I'm going to go ahead and get some more of my Titan Red. And then with just the Titan Red on my brush, I'm just going to go ahead and add another stroke, overlaying on top of what we've already added. So now this almost bumps up the texture and the color of our pumpkin. So I love it. It's like, it's just intensified everything on a whole other level. I'm going to do the same thing here. I don't want to cover all my English red areas, so I'm trying to sort of circle around it and just really add these more as highlights to, again, intensify our pumpkin. Make it brighter. Of course, if you like the lighter pumpkins, you don't need to do anything. You just want to leave it as is. But love this. And now once this is dried, we're going to go ahead and get some of the dark brown. So let's just say, I would say let's use some of the Mars brown or burnt umber or even sepia if you really wanted to stand out a lot. And let's create the stumps. So we did this first, so I think it should be safe enough to go in right now and just add that on. So I'll get the, what did I say I was going to get? I'm going to get burnt umber actually. Get some of that burnt umber. And again, using the same brush, we're just using one brush for this whole thing. I'm going to go here, this is dried up, and I will give it a nice little twirl. And because it's a nice dark brown, notice I'm leaving a little bit of white space in between at the top, and I'm pushing all the dark brown to the bottom so that it looks like it's light to dark. And then we'll do something very similar over here. Now this one, if you want to give it a little bit of a twirl, I think that would be cute. Again, requires a little bit of brush control. So you have to make sure that your brush is not holding tons of water. And you got a nice pointed tip. I'm just straightening the hairs on my brush here. And then you can just use the tip with a lot of brush control. You're going to lightly draw in this twirl. All right, here we go. So I'll do the twirl this way. Oh my gosh, I don't know if this turned out well. Oh, actually it's not too bad. Okay. And then I'm just going to extend this a little bit. There we go. And just like I did with the previous one, we are adding a little bit. I wish I had left more white space at the top, but it's so tiny, it's okay. I'm just pulling it all the way down here, and that's it. Okay, so that is it. We're almost at the end of this. One thing that I would like to add is a little bit of a splatter, and then we're done. So you can either choose to do your splatter in the green, so it looks like there's more green on the outs, or you could do some of the flower colors, and this way it looks like there's flower buds on the outside. So I think I will use a little bit of the carmine pinky hue that we have, because you guys know I love my carmine. So I got a little bit of that here, and I'm going to make sure I got enough water on my brush so that when I splatter it doesn't look like super tiny drops. Oh, not quite working out this way. Need another brush. I don't like covering up too much of my area when I do a splatter, because then it looks like the rest of the area was missed. Okay, so we've got some of the pink, and I'm going to get a little bit of the mauve purple, and I'm going to make sure that it's just on the insides of the pink here, so it's not overpowering. There we go, love it. And so at this point, if you want to take your brush and just lightly extend some of these to make it look like there's tinier flowers falling out or something like that, perfect timing to do that while these are little splatters, you know. Make it even look like they're just kind of up in the air. Perfect. Okay. And we are pretty much done. So that's it, guys. If you feel like you wanted to add a little bit more greenery, you can go ahead and do that, but I would just leave it like this, or experiment if you will, really. Thanks so much, guys, for watching. Let me know what you thought of this. Hit that like button. Make sure you've subscribed. And if you do end up doing this, please tag me in your work. I would love to see it on Instagram or on Facebook. Everything is noted below. And as per usual, thanks so much for joining me, and we'll chat soon. Bye.